Hello and welcome to the I Just Fell into Financial Planning podcast with me, Jamie Bradbury. Today's guest, I've been really looking forward to meet. We've been speaking for probably about the last 3-4 months or so. This is Jacob Crossley from Blithe Financial Management. Now, Jake is one of the youngest financial planners on the FCA Register at the moment. He has only just turned 20 as of about a month ago now. Now, what he did initially was he did an internship with Poynton Financial Services, initially starting out there when he was just 17. Then did a little stint at university, and then after that came back into the business and did all of his qualifications there, getting qualified June time, just this year, June 24. And yeah, like I said, I've been really looking forward to meet Jake. Jake, thank you for joining me. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you, Jamie. Thanks for having me.
Good.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
No. Yeah, I've been, like I said before, I'm really looking forward to this for a long time. First of all, how did you get into the profession?
So originally, what I was doing, I was in my first year of sixth form at just my local college. I was doing business and economics as two of my subjects, and I kind of thought business and economics, pretty good at them. I was always quite good at maths, and so when I was just thinking, what do I actually want to do? I thought the logical route was probably finance, as a huge amount of young people do, and certainly a huge amount of the people that I was with at college also did. Now, finance is a very, very broad field, and it can be a little bit daunting when you're kind of first looking at it. So I had to do an internship for a programme called the Career Ready programme whilst I was at sixth form. And so I had a little look around and I thought, right, what firms have we got near me which are related in some way to finance? And I saw Poynton Financial Services. I wrote an email in and then went in and spoke to the directors there, and they said they were willing to take me on. So I thought, right, okay, this is financial services. It's a group of financial advisors, and there was also a group of mortgage brokers there. And I thought, this is an opportunity. I'll go and have a look at it. So I got there. I did 6 weeks that summer through the summer holidays, and I just thought, you know what? I really like this. This is interesting. You meet loads of different people, talk to people who have done so many different things, so many different experiences. That's what I like. So I've got from there really having no idea what a financial advisor did or what a financial planner did, to kind of just following it through and going for it really.
Just out of interest, then, when you said you were saying that you were interested in finance,
Yes.
I'm interested to know what you thought it meant before you knew about financial planning. What did you think finance meant in?
It's a difficult question, but I think finance it's always from like a child's perspective, in terms of when I'm talking, when you're like 12 to 14 years old or whatever, you would probably think finance means money. But then once you get a bit of a better understanding as you get further along, you realise that it is not just to do with, it's not just to do with the pound sign in a little bag. It is more to do with what can we do with money, if that makes sense. And so you kind of, you've watched things on the telly, you might have seen Wolf of Wall Street and all things like that, and they're explaining all these different concepts that come up, and you see, you're studying economics, you're looking at different things that have happened at different points in time. So I think my idea of finance was really having a broad understanding of what goes on with, not just making money, but what is happening with money. What do people do with money, whether that be individuals or massive institutions or governments? And so I think I just wanted to be involved with all of that. I think I wanted to not I knew I never was going to know absolutely everything there was to know, but it was kind of a case of I want to see what happens with money. I want to see how important people use it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. I think the reason why I asked the question is that I wanted to see from someone that's been through the education system fairly recently, what your thoughts were on it. Because I think for some people, when people say finance, I think they probably think of investment bankers all the time.
Yeah, definitely.
Whereas, financial planning as a career, I don't think that many people know that much about it.
No, not at all. And I think that's an important point actually, because I think when you go through school, especially doing things like business economics or maths, whatever you might be doing, I think when people talk about jobs in finance, or actually as well my experience of when I was at university, they're always pushing investment management jobs or investment banking jobs.
Yeah.
I don't think that people really know that jobs in financial planning even exist. I'm really not sure that they even know that they're there. The only real reason that I knew about financial planners, I mean, obviously you kind of know it exists somewhere, but the only reason I knew anything about it was when I'd gone and done my internship and learnt really while I was there. Before that, I had very little prior knowledge of that.
When you actually went to go and get the job with Poynton, then how did you go about? Was it just a case of just sending random messages to people and seeing what came back?
The weird thing was, it was the first email that I sent. The first email that I sent to any company involved with finance was that one email, and he just told me to go into them, have a conversation, and yeah, I went in, I had the conversation. They seemed to like me. We got on well. Had a lot of similar interests, and so yeah, we kind of went from there, and then I learnt on the job really.
Well, I mean, for you, I mean, a massive stroke of luck, because I think definitely. I say to people that you probably, if you do it 100 times, you'll probably get about 2 opportunities.
Absolutely.
So I think you found that one.
It was absolutely a stroke of luck, and I'll always be grateful for them for kind of taking me on and giving me a chance. Really, because that was the driving force to me doing what I'm doing now. It was just the opportunity to go in and have a go.
So what did they get you doing when you were there as an intern, when you just had first started there?
Yeah, so I went in and kind of I was working one-to-one with an advisor, which obviously is hugely valuable as well. But it was kind of it really ranged from those administration-y type tasks, just data entry, stuff like that, all the way up to sitting in meetings with clients with that advisor and observing him and seeing the way that he did things. And that was from the get-go, really, that was the main thing that fueled my interest, because my favourite part was speaking to clients and obviously that being the reason why I've decided to go around the advice route rather than perhaps a paraplanning route, because I wanted to be in those meetings. I wanted to almost direct them, if that makes sense. But yeah, so it was ranging entirely up from administration, a bit of kind of very low level paraplanning work initially, all the way to observing meetings and just watching what he did day to day and shadowing him really for 6 weeks.
Did he get you to do anything whereby you were engaging with the client at all?
In the first internship that I did, there was no real, other than perhaps if you ended up going off on a bit of a tangent and talking about football or something like that, obviously I'd join in with those conversations. Yeah. But in terms of actually, I mean, obviously no advice given, but there was no real information given in the initial internship, because at the time I was kind of, I hadn't done any of the qualifications. My knowledge at that point in time wasn't great by any stretch, so it was more watching and learning. But then as we progressed, I then went and did an internship the next summer as well, straight after my A-levels. And then obviously going into the full-time work, there was more input from us. It gradually built over the years with the company.
It was, I think I remember when we spoke a few months back, yeah. when you were looking for the role, you were saying about, I was actually really impressed with what they did there, because you said that you got the so the client would be, I think your ex-boss would be talking about cash flow modelling, and then he'd go and say, right, Jake, over to you. And
yeah, I mean he was brilliant in terms of that, or the explanations of a concept, because I'd have watched him explain certain concepts so many times. And so then, obviously, he would get me to practice them with colleagues initially. And then on a few occasions, where when clients came in and it got to that point, he'd turn to me and kind of say, now, but essentially over to you, Jake. You have a go. You see how you do. And that for me, built my confidence up massively and has moved me forward, certainly, to where I am now.
And it's kind of, it sort of drilled it into you, I suspect.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, watching, because you get certain concepts, don't you, that come up all the time. And so observing those so many times means that then when you come to explain it, you've got a few analogies already under your belt. You're not struggling on the spot thinking, oh well, I know what that is, but how do I explain it to the person who's sat in front of me? Because you've seen it so many times. You've seen what works and what doesn't, which I found was really, really helpful. So when it comes to that now, when I'm speaking to my own clients, then it comes a lot more naturally than it perhaps would have done had I not had that experience.
I think it's fair to say I think you did a really good job,
Yeah,
actually.
definitely.
In terms of training, training you up.
And that one-to-one training, you just don't get that with a big company. The one-to-one with an advisor, I think, working in a much smaller company, I could not recommend it more for training and for getting the grasp of what you need to do. That's what I think.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't. I mean, I think I told you this. I tend to deal with small to medium-sized companies, so it tends to be on the whole that that's what I've seen. I mean, I think that there will be some larger firms that will probably do that, but I think you can sometimes get a bit lost in the larger firms there like that, and I think there's a more personal touch there.
Definitely,
that you would get with the firm that you were at.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I do think there's value in any company, and I think being at that smaller company, perhaps, in terms of you see perhaps what is done on the low level. So, for example, the first company I was with was a restricted company, so we were restricted in our advice, and so we were following a larger network. So perhaps on that side, I think going into my new company now, where we're directly authorised, there's certainly been a learning curve there too, because perhaps I was in that company, but because say the compliance side of things was being done by the network, and a lot of the paraplanning stuff that I did perhaps was, not maybe not a lower standard, but a different standard to what it is now in the directly authorised firm. So I think perhaps if I've been in a large company, perhaps you might have seen more of that than I did originally. But I mean, as I say, I'm learning that now as I move over.
I think there's a bit of mucking in kind of culture with smaller firms, and I think you just get a little bit of access to everything, which I think actually is really good for the future. I'm not saying that there's any problem with going with a larger firm, just saying that with the smaller firms you do get that kind of you just get that experience that you wouldn't get, where you're going to have to, sometimes you might have to hold the fort and take a telephone call.
And exactly.
And even stuff like that's useful.
Oh yeah, definitely, yeah.
So,
well, I mean, I think just whether it's a case of kind of just purely taking a few phone calls with the simplest of inquiries, or someone booking in for a meeting, something like that, in terms of your interpersonal skills, which obviously as an advisor are probably your most important skills, really. Building your confidence speaking to clients, because at 16 or 17, when you're speaking to people who are considerably older than yourself, you don't necessarily really do that just in your everyday life. So building that confidence and kind of getting rid of that imposter syndrome where you're thinking, should I really be here? When you have those conversations, you get that confidence in yourself, and it makes you realise, you know what, I should be here, and I'm here for a reason. So I think, even just taking those simple calls can massively improve yourself for later down the line. Like now, when I speak to clients, I'm not, in those first meetings, sat with clients, I'd be sat there, I'd be shaking, I'd be thinking, oh my, I am so nervous here. What if something goes wrong? What if I'm asked a question that I don't know the answer to? But as your confidence builds up, that it makes you realise that no matter how experienced of an advisor you are, you're still gonna, you're not going to know absolutely everything all the time. So sometimes just the confidence to say, I'm not actually sure, I'll check that later. Understanding that you can do that not everyone all the time is going to expect you to know everything. Those skills that you build in the early stages are so important further down the line.
You went to university for a little bit. You went to Sheffield University.
Yes.
Why didn't you go down the more traditional route of going to university, staying there for 3 years, doing your degree, and then coming out and finding a job in the big wide world?
Yeah, I mean, I had always when I was in school, I was quite academic. I always thought actually that university would absolutely be for me. I thought I'd get there and it'd be kind of, right, let's have 3 years, let's study, let's get a degree, Maybe even go further than that. But I got there. So I was doing a BSc in accounting, finance, and economics. So it was quite a broad mix really. And I found really when I was on the course that so for example there was a financial management element to one of the courses, and having had that previous experience with the financial planning company that I was at, I just found sitting there I was thinking this feels a little bit outdated. It sort of feels it didn't, if you know what I mean. It felt very theoretical, but not very practical. Now, and I know when you study, obviously that kind of goes without saying that it is going to be theoretical because that's what study is. But I just felt that the things that I was learning at that point weren't really going to benefit me. I was kind of thinking, I think that I might be better here going out and having 3 years of experience in work and learning the skills on a more practical level than I would if I just sit here and do this study. And so the driving force also for me was I had an incident when I was there. So I got mugged by some lads, and one of them ended up attacking me with a knife when I was at university. So that obviously played a factor in, you're never going to be happy in a place when something like that happens. But so that factor alongside the factor of I'm not sure this is helping me with what I want to do, just kind of pushed me away from that ideal. And that's not me saying that university is useless. It's not me saying that university isn't right for some people. But I just found while I was there, I know what I want to do. And I think there's a clear way that I can go out and do that now. I think if I approach the company that I've been at already and ask them, can I come and work for you? Can I come and do this? Can I create a career for myself? Then I can do that. And so obviously that happened. So I don't regret it. I think looking back, there was a lot of pressure behind me to stay at university because a lot of my friends went to university. My parents are both lecturers in universities, so there was a lot of pressure to stay there.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, I mean there was a lot of pressure all around me. Everybody telling me you should stay at university. University is for people like you. This is, it's designed for someone who wants to better themselves and wants to learn like you. But I just felt myself, there's an alternative route. There's a way to do this, which doesn't follow that path. And I also think when you look at the qualifications that you have to do, so you have to do the diploma, obviously, to be an advisor, and the university course wasn't kind of, it wasn't meaning that I had to do any less of those. I would still have had to come out and do those after university. So I kind of thought, if I get that specific knowledge, if I get that specific knowledge from those exams alongside getting the practical application of that, I just thought for me that was a better way of doing things, and looking back, I would do the exact same thing again.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's there's a wider issue here, isn't there? Because I think that a lot of people go. I think now it's almost a given that when you're doing your A levels that you should go to university. It's like the done thing to do. I mean, I know that was what I was told.
Yeah, absolutely.
And my school in particular were just so set on getting you there.
And I found with us it was either you go to university or you do a degree apprenticeship. It was one of the two. Nobody ever told you that just getting a job would be an option. So. It didn't even in my mind at the initial point seem like it was something that I was even allowed to do. So I don't know. I just something just hit me one day when I was kind of sat there because I wasn't happy where I was because of obviously the circumstances. Didn't exactly feel all that safe necessarily in Sheffield, but I think it just hit a point with me where I kind of thought, why am I actually doing this? Because I was looking at what I was learning. It was, 10 contact hours a week or something. As I was thinking, I've been told all my life, go to a Russell Group university, and there you go, pretty much. Go and try and get a first or a 2-1 at a Russell Group university, and then you're set for life. But I was looking at what I was learning, and I was kind of thinking, what is this actually doing to benefit me in what I want to do? I know what I want to do, and this isn't going to help me do it. And that's that's not to say that if you're doing, I think that there's a massive value to university for some things, and you need it for some things. But I looked at what I wanted to do and thought, there's a better way of doing this, really, in my view.
Again, I mean, yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
And I think as well, it's really mature because that's a tough thing to have to do.
Yeah.
To have to make that decision, to have to go to leave university, particularly when your parents are lecturers as well.
Yeah,
that's a
absolutely.
really, really tough decision. I can't.
Yeah.
I suspect that there was some serious pressure. Serious pressure.
Yeah.
Did you tell them what you wanted to do and what the plan was?
Yeah, I told them this is what I'm going to do. There was a little bit of backlash from that, but yeah, I just said I have a plan. This is where I want to be in 2 years, 5 years, and then I said, and I'm going to go with that. And so I spoke. Well, obviously, I spoke to the firm first. I didn't kind of drop out and then say, I'll try and get a job. I went and got myself a job secured beforehand. But then once I had that, I thought, you know what, that's the route I'm going to go with. And I told them, and I mean, whether they agreed with it or not at first, I don't know. But I went with it, and I've not looked back from there. And if you ask them now, they'd certainly tell you that was the right thing to do.
And this was January 23 when you went and joined the firm full time.
Yeah, start of January.
And then tell me about the journey for getting the exams.
Okay, yeah. So anyone who's done those exams knows that if you start with RO1, that is enough to drain anybody's enthusiasm for the financial services industry. And I did do that one first. I'll hold my hands up to it. And it took me a few months because it's quite dry, to be honest. And when you think about the exciting side of the financial services industry and you're doing RO1, that's really demoralising because you're kind of like, and if I ever was regretting my decision to leave, leave the party at university, essentially, that it was that point when I was sat in the evening after work, kind of 8 in the evening till 10, reading about regulation. that wasn't the most interesting side of things, but the advice I'd give to anybody doing those exams is be persistent with it, because as soon as you leave those exams for a few, if you say you've read the text and you think I'll have a bit of a break, as soon as you leave that, you lose your momentum. But those exams, they are something where you can really get a rhythm going. For me, what I did was I read through the text once and then just blasted practice exam questions, and then maybe would, if you get in certain areas wrong consistently, then read the text again. But I would honestly say anyone with an interest in the industry could do those exams, and they are. I wouldn't say that they are necessarily interesting, but they do give you a really good depth of understanding to start with for the job. I think I kind of draw the analogy of it's like driving a car. You know, once you've passed those exams, that's when you actually start learning to be an advisor. But in getting to that point of passing the exam, that is giving you what you need in order to start learning to be an advisor, if that makes sense.
What would you do? Would you do a different exam first if you were to do it again?
I think the best exam... Well, it's difficult, actually, because you do kind of need the regulation exam in order to pass some of the other ones, because the regulation does come into everything.
Yep.
So I think for me it was useful to do the regulation exam first. However dry it may have been in comparison with the other ones. But it's really essential. You do need to know it, and you do need to know it to pass the other exams as well. But I would say if you're looking for one that doesn't take too long and gives you a bit of a feel for the exams, the RO5, which is the protection side of things, that is, well, it's not an easy one, but it's simpler in its complexity than some of the others are. But I think I would still do. I would still go RO1 first. I think just to give you that depth of understanding on the regulation, because that does come into all of it.
From what I've heard, I think once you've done that one, you can do the rest because it's
yeah. I mean, you need the more kind of technical product knowledge on obviously the pension ones, and the tax one is a bit of a nightmare as well. But the thing is, you can do the RO1, you can do the regulation one without having any of the other ones. But I think if you're going to do pensions or you're going to do the taxation one, you probably do need the regulation one first, because regulation comes into pensions and it comes into taxation and stuff like that. So it gives you a good base level, I would say.
And then you started doing them round about January, start of last year, 23.
I started the exams actually in April of 23,
Okay.
because we wanted a few months just to get started first, and kind of get to grasp with the roles. But then I started the exams in April.
So you did the Diploma. When did you take the RO6 exam?
April 20.
So you did it in a year, basically.
Yeah, pretty much.
God.
But and that's another reason actually why I think doing it kind of I know I did do a little stint at university, but I think that was a reason why doing it straight out of school was probably quite a good idea, because if you come out of school, you are used to doing exams. You know exams, you know how to do them, you know how to pass an exam, you know how to learn what you need to learn, and you're in a rhythm. When I went to do RO6, I spoke to some of the other people doing the exam at the same time. I think the guy that sat next to me was about 27, 28. So he'd done university, then he'd done a few years as an admin, and then kind of had moved on to Paraplanner, and he was doing his RO6 on the same day as me. What he said to me was, I have run out of energy doing exams. This is my second time doing RO6, and I've just run out of energy with it. I can't be bothered doing exams anymore. Whereas I think if you do it earlier, I have that enthusiasm still. Since finishing the diploma, I've gone on to do the discretionary investment management exam. I've gone on to do my mortgages exam, and I've still got the energy. I'm moving towards chartered. I want to get that chartered status. Not that necessarily gives you any advantage in the job per se, but I want to do that. I want to better my knowledge. I want to go further with it. And I think having done it so early, that means that my enthusiasm is still there, if that makes sense. I've not had kind of, university exams, then coming out, then more exams. And, I've gone straight from my A-levels, and I've found something that I just couldn't do. And the exams are all right. My knowledge on it is already fairly strong. So when it comes to learning about those things, it's, when you're doing the exams alongside doing the work as well, you see examples of what you see in the text all the time. If you're doing your pensions exam, you might have had a pension client that you were doing some planning for earlier that day, within the firm, and so it brings context to it all. It's not theory in the same way, because it's applied to your work as well, which I find really helpful. I know not everybody does. I know some people, some of my friends, are just, they're all about reading a book, and then the knowledge goes in. But for me, I like to see examples of, okay, but how does that actually work in the real world context? And I think working just does that.
Is that what you do then? Do you sort of, when you were doing this initially for the diploma then last year, you'd sort of see something in practice and think, oh, right, well, how do I relate that to a real world problem? And then sort of go to the advisor and say, look, this is what I'd like to learn about. Is that what you were doing?
Yeah. I mean, a key one I found was with investment bonds, because investment bonds were something that came up a little bit less, I found, in my day-to-day work than say just a standard ISA would come up. So when I was reading about that in the book, I went to my boss and I said, I really don't don't get this. How does that work? And then he goes to a client file and gets me a practical example and shows me a real investment bond, shows me how it works, in terms of the withdrawals, how that has worked over a kind of 10-year span, which to me, learning how they actually work and actually seeing that from the perspective of, for an actual client that actually exists, that consolidated the knowledge so much faster for me than I think if I just read the same explanation of what an investment bond was over and over again.
I can see how it can work without a doubt. And then are you doing this with the advance? So actually, when do you want to become level 6 qualified?
In an ideal world, it's a bit of a pain with the level 6 ones because they only come around every 6 months. With when you can actually take them.
It's October and April, isn't it? I think.
It's something like that, or maybe September, but it's September, October, April, whenever it is. So I need to do 4 of the level 6 ones with my plan, and then I need to get a few extra credits from elsewhere. In an ideal world, 2 months down the sorry, not 2 months, 2 years down the line, if I can do one level 6 exam every 6 months and do the lower level ones just in the gaps in between those, in an ideal world 2 years down the line. But I don't think I'll necessarily stop there, because if there's something that comes up that I think will be useful to me, I'll do it, because I just think if it betters my knowledge in a certain area, but why not just have a go? I've got the enthusiasm for it, so I don't think I'll necessarily stop with the level 6.
So it would just be a case of just taking whatever you can, basically, if there's some practical use.
If there's something there and I think that could help me with a client, that could help me to help somebody else, then I'll do it at the end of the day. Whether it always will. I mean, I did the discretionary investment management exam, and that really was more out of interest. That's because I quite like that stuff. And that probably will never help me to actually say. It'll never help me with my client individually, in terms of it's never going to tell me a product to use or anything like that. But I think having the depth of knowledge and understanding of what investment managers are doing is going to be massively helpful with clients, because although I will never be an investment manager myself, knowing what they are doing is knowing what they're doing when they're researching a product and putting into a portfolio perhaps for a client that you might use yourself. It's useful to know that.
Well, you never know. I mean, in the future, it could be that you want to have discretionary permission. So you want to do it. You might have your own firm, and you might think to yourself, well, why don't we do this?
But potentially.
You've got the ability to do it.
You never know.
No, exactly. I was going to ask about the trainee financial planner role at Blithe House.
Yes, yeah.
Just so, first of all, tell me how it came about, because to give some context to it, it isn't easy when you're 19 years old, when you were going for the role. You were 19 years old.
Yeah.
How did you get the role? Tell me.
So it came. So I spoke to multiple recruiters, things like that, and we had those conversations. I had a couple of interviews, things like that, with various places, and was having conversations. And then when it came to Blithe House, that was actually so it was a position that I had seen open on Reed, which is like a place where the jobs are advertised. And I looked at it and I thought, when I was reading the description of it, it just seemed a little bit different to some of the other positions that were open, and I just thought that looks really good. So I directly applied through there, and then was put in touch with the company director at Blithe. So who they then offered me it wasn't an interview as such, it was an initial conversation. It was in a really kind of neutral setting. It was just in a hotel lobby kind of thing, for an initial chat, where you just kind of told me about, so obviously, the position that was being offered, and the company itself, and what their ambitions are. And seeing that, for me, I just thought that's the kind of project that I want to get in on. So we ended up having about 3 interviews over the course of a month or so. And every time I went, I sort of felt more inclined to carry on further, because I had a few other offers actually when it came to picking the role. So some of which offered similar-ish positions, but there was something about that position where I just thought, long term, where I want to be, that I think that's the role that I go for.
What so there you're a trainee financial planner
Yeah.
there, but you're on the register, you're regulated, so
Yes,
you do that. Not got CAS status,
No,
but
not yet.
working towards that. What are they doing in terms of getting you in front of clients? How are you doing this? What's the plan?
Yeah, so at the moment, the plan in the longer term is that I will be expected to go out and get my own clients.
Yep.
But at the same time, I'm also coming in to take a little bit of weight off the shoulders of my boss. So with some of the existing clients within the company, I will be involved with those clients. In what capacity, I'm not entirely sure whether it's going to be a case of I fully take over those clients or that I'm there in case, because for example, there's a few self-employed advisors within the company, but other than my boss, I'm the only employed advisor there. So perhaps a case where if I'm needed to step in those situations, then I can do. But at the minute, it's a case of I go round with him to meet clients, to get me out there. Starting to actually do some observations in terms of taking a few presentation meetings or taking fact find meetings to help towards that CAS status. And it's an ongoing process. But what's really good is they've not put big deadlines on me to say this date, if you're not there by then you're gone or anything like that. There's no enormous targets that have to be met. It feels a very relaxed process, which means that I can, I'm not rushing to try and just do meetings and get them out the way as quickly as possible so that I get CAS status.
Yep.
It's a case of learn to do this properly, and once you can do this properly, then later down the line you can go and be let off the lead, so to speak.
Are you going to be doing, so the clients they're handing over, are you doing annual reviews for them, and then have they started doing that yet, passing
So we've it's going to be a longer term process in terms of it's not necessarily going to be a case that I am the advisor, for example, for certain clients. It's more a case that clients get to know me as well as knowing the current company director, so that they feel comfortable if they have problems and queries. There's either of us that they can go to.
Yep.
So I haven't taken any annual review meetings at the moment, but I've been at annual review meetings to kind of observe and chip in where needs be. And then there's been a few new business leads that come in that I then do take under observation.
So yeah, I was having a look and I saw I did some research on how many young advisors there are under the age of 25. Can you have a guess how many there are in the UK?
59. I've also done that research. I've seen that. I think did you post about it or something like that?
I did post about it, but it was slightly more than that. I believe it was 147. I might got that figure wrong, but it was low.
Yeah. And if you think about the amount of advisors leaving the industry through retirement and things like that each year.
Well, yeah, what had happened is that the ages of people that were 60 plus was increasing.
Yeah.
And pretty much I think 50 to 60 or 50 to 59 was increasing as well. But obviously people are getting older and then they're going into the next bracket, aren't they? The next age bracket that they put in. Just be interested to know what you thought about trying to get young people into the profession.
Yeah, well, I mean, I
and
think,
how we can do it.
Yeah, it's a good question. First step needs to be awareness, and it needs to be. People need to know that it exists. People need to know that they can do that, because coming out of school, for example, you got no idea. The only reason I knew that the job existed was because I'd done the experience with the company that I had done.
It was kind of a bit of a fluke that you fell into it.
Yeah, it was completely by chance that I fell into the industry, really. The first day, I mean, I don't know exactly how you go about doing it, but people need to know that it's there. Because I know, when you see like threads on LinkedIn from advisors talking to advisors, but I think a lot of the time it is it stays within a small kind of pen of people who are all already interested in it. The only people who are seeing the debates that people are having about the advice gap or about why have we not got enough young people in the industry, they're floating around between people who already know it's a problem, but the people that aren't seeing that are the people that potentially could fill that gap, I think. So whether that be going into schools and kind of speaking to sixth formers, things like that, and telling them this is actually a potential option, this exists, potentially you've got things like that. I think it would help if courses on universities, for example, maybe you didn't need to have RO1 and something like that, but if you had a certain degree, maybe something like that, or college courses that perhaps lead you towards financial planning, because the closest thing that I can think of to financial planning is probably business or economics, and neither of them are that similar, really. I mean, the knowledge you have from economics is useful in financial planning, but it doesn't actually, there's nothing like that. And I think some of the things that get covered in school, in my opinion, were just, without being rude to the educational system, were pointless. A lot of the things you were learning and being told about on, our school had things like student development days, where they just essentially wasted your time for the day and told you about a load of stuff that none of the kids there took any further than that. I know it's really cliche to say, but talking about things like tax, talking about, pensions, talking about the way that money works, because not even if someone's going into financial services, but if they're just people go out and work, how to budget, things like that. Schools, or my school, certainly didn't talk about that, whereas they talked about a lot of other stuff that I am never going to use in my life. So I think maybe if a few financial advisors started to run a program where they went into schools and spoke to students about things like budgeting, or about things like cash flow modelling, what can lead to what if you do this here, what can that potentially do for you going forward. And I think that'll not only help kids in schools to kind of understand things like budgeting for when they just go out and work, whether that be in financial services or not, but I think if you've got someone at the front of the room who's quite charismatic and quite good at what they do, that should also inspire a couple of the other kids in the room to think, oh, actually, what he does looks quite interesting. I might fancy doing that. I think that would be one way of doing it.
Yeah.
But I suppose it's which advisor then gives up their time in order to go and do that. Where's maybe the incentive to go and do it?
You're absolutely right. I think that there's a lot of things that need to be done to raise awareness.
Yeah.
I think it also seems crazy to me that loads of people are going into things like law and accountancy, and my goodness me, sorry, without being damning of them, I mean, I know little bits and pieces there, but there is no way that it is more interesting than financial planning.
Not in my opinion.
I mean,
I suppose different people see it in different ways.
We're biased, aren't we?
I'm very biased towards what I do, but I would think certainly for a kind of quite extroverted person, if you like talking to people and stuff like that, I would have thought financial planning is far more suited to you than accountancy or I don't know, actually. I don't know enough about being a solicitor to be able to comment on that. But
in fairness, I think I'm being derogatory and sort of flipping with my comments there. But it seems crazy to me that you've got people that are absolutely so many people. So I remember that my stepmother used to work for a law firm and dealt with the inquiries coming in for people that wanted to get an in. What are they called? I've forgotten what they call it when you go in there and you practice to become a solicitor. Anyway, had loads of people going for these roles. Just so many people going for it, and we just don't have. So I think there is another problem as well, because you've come up with the demand side of things. I would say that if I get a role where it's a trainee role, there's going to be loads of there's still going to be a lot of applicants for it. So I think that there is a supply side issue as well as a demand side issue.
Well, really, that probably could have been done with being met 20 years ago or 10 years ago in that, because even if you try and get people into the industry now, they still need. I mean, because there aren't actually that many trainee positions out there. I wouldn't, or I certainly didn't see that many trainee positions going. So to be fair, if you get loads of people interested in it, you do need to have enough roles for them to then take, which is another issue. Because what the industry kind of needs, it probably needs a lot of already fully qualified and trained people in their 30s, say, rather than but late 20s, early 30s to early 40s. Whereas obviously if you go in and run a program in schools, what you're going to get is a bunch of teenagers coming out and wanting to do it, in which case they're not going to be skilled to do it. So I think it's more a process of trying to, I mean, you can't retrospectively bring anything in, that's going to help people from 10 years ago. But I think you can start to address the problem today, and then it was not going to immediately solve it, but over the longer term, that bridges that gap.
You're absolutely right. It's going to take a lot of time.
Yeah, definitely.
To get this going. You've gone on to something though that I'd just be interested to know about from your perspective. What do you find any barriers to your age? Because let's be open here. You're a young guy.
Yeah,
I mean,
for sure.
Meeting you, you're incredibly mature for somebody that's 20 years old.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah.
Have you had issues? Have you encountered issues just in everyday working life?
I think your main obstacle really is your own mind, and if your own mind is telling you, I'm too young to be talking to this person, then they'll probably see that. But I think if you go in and you talk to someone with confidence, and obviously you're qualified, you wouldn't be sat there if you weren't qualified. So I think if you believe in yourself and believe I am here for a reason and I can talk to someone, you bring that across in the way that you speak with them. I haven't encountered any issues yet. I can see them coming up. But possibly at some point it will be an issue. But if it is, then that's the advantage that we kind of have at Blithe, because you've got an very experienced advisor there, and then you've got me there. So if that issue did come up, then I could just say, well, if you don't want to talk to me, we've got an advisor with 20 plus years of experience over there, and you can speak to them, or I can refer you on to someone else. So it hasn't come up as yet, but if it does, then I also completely understand that if someone's coming to you with their life savings, if you look at me and you don't want to talk to me, then okay, that's fine. I'm not going to force you to take my advice. We can find somebody else for you, because at the end of the day, the well-being of the client is the most important thing. But yeah, maybe there are barriers that I haven't come across yet, but I think the main barrier is that someone of my age might get a bit of that kind of imposter syndrome where they look and they think, should I be here? But the fact of the matter is, if you're qualified to do what you do and you're employed by somebody to do that job, then yes, you should be there.
Well, I think the other thing to say is, I think I've said this to you when we were speaking a few months back. I think it's difficult to find trainee roles as it is.
Yeah.
So the fact that you've done this with the fact that you are younger.
Yeah.
It's just all credit to you. I don't mind saying to you that I was incredibly surprised and impressed when you came to me and told me, I've actually been offered this role, and I think I said to you, well, you just need to take it straight away. Grab that, take it. It's how is it going in general, the job?
It's going really well. It's kind of going in. Obviously, it's a new company, so I've only been there a month and a half now. So a lot of it is kind of going back to the basics of, this is how we do our processing, or the paraplanning systems are obviously different to where I was.
Yeah.
And I alluded to that earlier when we talked about the new firm is directly authorised, which is different to the previous structure. So at the moment, I'm still getting used to that. The differences between companies. It's a different workplace culture. So yeah, I'm still very much adapting to that. But I think where the company's going is that's where I want to be, because it's growing. I think the director's got really good ambitions to what he wants to do with the company, and what I need is a company that's growing, because if I want to grow personally, and so me growing benefits the company, and the company growing benefits me. So I think it just goes really well hand in hand together. And just on the point of what you were saying also earlier about in terms of limitations, I think you can see age as a limitation, and some clients may well see that. But I think there's another way of looking at it in terms of if you've got the average age of a financial advisor being, I think, is it 59 or something like that?
I think it is 59, yeah.
Yeah, that's probably where I got my number from,
Yeah.
25 from. But if the average age of an advisor is 59, and let's say those advisors are retiring at 65, some of them will retire earlier than that. The essence of financial planning is that you need to know your clients. You need to know all the details of their lives, really. It's not even just knowing about their finances. You need to know those clients like you would know your friends. And so from a client perspective, the way I certainly would be looking at it is, so yeah, I could take an advisor with 30 years experience who's 59 and is going to be retiring in 5 years, but then when that advisor retires, I'm going to have to get to know and trust somebody completely different. And moving forward, if you're going to have to do that every 5 years, is that really going to benefit your finances? Or if you take someone who is 20, and you speak to them, well, I can get to know you in that 5 years, but then say someone in their 40s, I'm going to be planning with them probably for their whole life, not just for a few years. We can take not just this financial decision, but every financial decision for the rest of your life, and building up that trust and that relationship over potential. I mean, if I worked on my state pension age, then I'm not allowed to retire for another 47 years. So that's a long time for planning. I mean, obviously, things come up, and not everyone retires at the state pension age. But if I'm going to be working for even just another 40 years, the relationships and the trust that can be built up in that time, you're changing people's lives. You're not just changing the next 5 years of their lives, if that makes sense.
I mean, I keep saying this today, but I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think it's a great point. I mean, you've just flipped the argument on its head, essentially, saying, well, look, you've got somebody here that's maybe a little bit older than I am.
Yeah.
If let's say that they work for another firm, but you've got somebody there that you can deal with. They're going to be around for another 5 years. Hey, look, why not take a chance on me, because I'll be here for the rest of your life.
Exactly.
And I will be able to help you.
Yeah.
And I'm just as well qualified as that person over there.
Exactly.
And I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So look, and rest assured, I'm going to do a good job for you.
Yeah. I mean, if you want, if your main priority as the client is, I want someone who has 30 years of experience, I'm not the man. I'm not the man for that job, because I don't have 30 years of experience. But if I was looking at it from the client's perspective, I think I'd be thinking, what's the most important thing here to me? And it's having a strong relationship, having trust, and that's something that with me that can continue for a long time. And I think that's just the way I would be looking at it. But different people look at things in different ways. But
again, I think it's a fantastic point. Really, really great point. And you just flipped it around completely. And I think that would get someone thinking as well, particularly a client.
No, exactly.
If they were to say it,
and that's not going to be the case for everybody, because everybody's different. But yeah, I mean, it's a point that I think is so often ignored. The idea of if someone's coming towards the end of the career, if you're a financial planner, that person, that individual's life and their financial planning does not end on the day that you retire. That has to continue for the rest of their life as well. So what do they then do when you retire? They have to go and find somebody else. And even if you've got somebody else within your company, I don't think clients see financial planning as something that is done by a company. I think they see it as something that is done by their advisor, by an individual, and it's the trust that they have on an individual level, and the relationship, the rapport that's been built up over that time. And so, I just think, why would you not want to build it with one individual for a longer period of time than have to chop and change every 5 years?
No, I agree. I think the only thing that I will say, that I can actually say that maybe potentially could be a benefit, is that if you've got several touch points within a firm, which it sounds like Blithe House are actually doing.
Yeah.
So you've got your director as well, and the thing is that if they can't deal with your director for whatever reason, you can go in,
for sure.
or vice versa.
Yeah,
and
I mean that is hugely valuable.
Well,
as well.
I think it is hugely valuable, because it also means as well that if you've got several touch points, then I think I'm thinking more from the perspective of a business owner. But if that person leaves for whatever reason, then the clients do have that affiliation with the firm, they will know. But you're right, though. I think that it does tend to be individual on the whole.
Yeah. But I suppose it probably is about finding the balance, isn't it? I mean, there's probably there's no one right way of doing it. There's not that one is directly better than the other. But if you've got a mix of a few, then I would have thought that's probably the strongest business model that you could have.
Yeah. Oh yeah, without a doubt. You went early. You were talking earlier on about the fact that Blithe House is directly authorised,
yes,
and Poynton were restricted.
Yeah.
How has the transition been in terms of moving from that restricted environment into being independent and also directly authorised as well?
Yeah, it's really different. I think the main thing the principle behind the job is the same. It's that what you do is within your client's best interests, and you're trying to achieve the best for your clients. But I think the way you go about doing it, so I think more on the kind of, for example, the paraplanning level. So I'm still doing a bit of paraplanning now at Blithe to try and get the hang of that, and mainly to know, not that I will necessarily be doing that in the longer term, but to know how it is done and know the Blithe way of doing it. And it's all different, because obviously different companies have literally just different formats of documents and things like that, and include different things within their reports. So from that side of things, it's quite a different shift. But I think with the ultimate idea of the job and what you're supposed to be doing, I actually think it is possibly easier being directly authorised and independent to go out, to the whole of market, because then the product you can go with is, well, you can make sure that is the best product, and there's no qualms about that whatsoever, because you do your research, you do your due diligence, and I think for making sure that that you're acting in the client's best interest, that for me feels easier.
I guess that
I'm early days, obviously.
I'm obviously not a financial planner, but I think from my limited understanding of it, the thing is that if you're restricted, I think sometimes you're trying to prove that you can go down the restricted route, and that can sometimes be quite difficult in a few ways. Although you've obviously, I
think there's huge value to restricted firms, and there's huge value to independent firms as well, and I think both of them have their own merits. But I think for me, what I needed in my career was a step, because I've done restricted, so I think I needed the step to see how an independent firm works, to make sure that my understanding of the way the entire market works, if you like, is strong enough. Because I felt that if I just stayed there and I only knew that, can I really do my job to the best of my abilities if I just know one firm's system, if that makes sense?
Yeah, no.
I think having the mix of knowledge and knowing a bit of both is really useful.
Well, I think the other thing as well is that Blithe House have given you a fantastic opportunity to become a trainee financial planner as well. And the great thing about it as well, which I've really, really can't endorse enough, is that, and more smaller firms need to do it, is just getting you straight into dealing with the advice straight away and just putting you out there. There's probably going to be a few hand-holding bits here and there, but they've really let you just get on with it. Whereas, from when we spoke, I don't think you could have looked for a more ideal role.
No, absolutely.
Without a shadow of a doubt. I think you found exactly the right place for you.
Well, that's the thing. It's kind of, I've got the full support of the director in terms of go out and do networking and see what you can do, but at the same time, I've not got the burden of enormous targets on my back. I've been told you can relax. You're not under huge amounts of pressure here. What we want from you is we want you to be brilliant, but if that takes a bit of time, that's fine. We're patient. We're not expecting you to go out straight away and be the complete package, because I know I have stuff to learn, but the important fact is that they're willing to help me learn those things. That they're not just expecting me to know everything straight away, which for me is perfect.
Yeah, but Exactly. And I think the fact that they've gone into that pseudo role as well, where you've kind of got a mix between doing a bit of paraplanning
Yeah,
and financial planning as well, giving
yeah,
the advice side of things is a great way of doing it.
yeah,
Um, just a final couple of questions.
yeah.
Just from your perspective, then, I was just interested to know what let me put it a different way. If you were to pitch
Hmm.
the financial planning profession to some youngsters,
Yeah.
what would you say to them to make them think, "Oh, this sounds like a good career for me"?
What are youngsters interested in these days? I feel out of touch already.
What, at the age of 20?
um, I suppose it's trying to find the unique selling point of the industry, and for me, what I love about it is, I mean, I think that the thing that really drove me, as I kind of looked around me, and I've always been into kind of me footy and stuff like that, and so you see footy players up at the top of the game earning ridiculous amounts of money, and yet still you see the stories of them running themselves into financial difficulties. But then at the same time, you see your parents or your friends' parents making financial decisions, and then coming to the same kind of points. And I think that puts it into perspective that it doesn't have to be somebody who's worth millions and millions of pounds, and it doesn't have to be worth someone who's worth nothing. Different people make different decisions, and those decisions lead them to where they end up. And as a financial planner, you can guide someone, no matter how rich or poor they may be, and improve their standard of living. Someone who's earning £20,000 a year could actually have a far better lifestyle than someone who's earning £100,000 a year if they kind of plan right, if that sort of makes sense. So I think what I would tell a youngster is, you have an opportunity to go out and speak to the widest variety of people that you could ever wish to meet in any role, and you can work with them to just improve their lifestyle. And I think that was the driving factor for me. I think it's that, see the way different people live their lifestyles, and that can also help you in a personal way to improve the way you are in your, you can model yourself into an image of the person you want to be based on speaking to so many different people with so many different experiences. And if you can help one person each little bit, that's only going to help you moving forward yourself. I mean, I know it sounds very cliche, but helping other people is going to help you. And then obviously as well, it's a profession where it's not, you're not earning footballers' wages, but it's also an industry where if you did want to start your own company, there's massive potential to do that. Or if you work under somebody else, equally, it's not a profession where you're working stupid hours for very little reward. You are rewarded for your work.
I think that was a very good pitch and a very good way of putting it.
Well, I hope so. I hope some youngsters hear that and then say, I'm doing that now.
What would you, and then let's say that somebody they've had their head and they thought, oh, actually financial planning is a good profession to get into. What advice would you give somebody that's young, wants to get into it?
I'd say just do it. Get on with it. Would be my honest advice. I mean, I know it sounds blunt, but you've got exams to do. Get started on them. Do them, and you'll have to make sacrifices when you're doing that. In the early stages, so I did that diploma in a year, but that wasn't just simple. I spent my evenings doing that. I had to make sacrifices in order to get there. Not to say you have to do it in a year either. You can do it in your own, it is in your own time. But get going, get yourself a role, get yourself some experience, and pay attention, make mistakes, but learn from the mistakes that you make. Learn from the other experienced people that are around you. Crack on with your exams alongside that, and just do it. Just get going and work hard. Make the sacrifices you have to make, and do it, because you can do it. I'm living proof that you can do it, and there's loads of other advisors around me that I'm sure there are people, from all backgrounds, all positions, who do what I do. You can do it. There's in terms of barriers to entry, I wouldn't say there are many, because you can do it. You can start as an administrator, move to a paraplanner, then be an advisor. You can do that. There's no there's nothing stopping you.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Not a problem.
I really appreciate it. So Jake's come on a day when Leeds Fest is on. There's a lot of wind, and it wasn't an easy journey over. So no, thank you again.
Not a problem. Not a problem. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much to Jake for joining me on the I Just Fell Into Financial Planning podcast. Covered some great topics today, including how he got into the profession and his journey getting there to become a regulated financial planner, albeit with a little bit of work to do, a lot of learning to do. He's only 20 years old at the end of the day. We covered the exam side of things as well and what he did there, his advice on how to get into it. Just crack on with it, essentially. If you're looking to get into it, crack on with it. And again, Jake got into the profession just by contacting his local firm and asking them to give him a chance for an internship, and he got it. And this was at the age of 16. You really can do it. If you liked this podcast, you enjoyed it, share it with friends. Really appreciate that. Share it if you can. And thank you so much for listening and watching.